What's up everyone? We've got another video talking about audio for video. Nate's back. He's gonna show us how to use all of these microphones that we talked about in part one. So if you haven't seen part one, make sure you go check that out first. Come back here and we're gonna show you how to use these mics. If you're new here, my name is Caleb and I've been doing freelance video production since 2012. And this channel is to help you make your own videos, whether you just started or you've been making them for a while, whether you use a GH5 or any other camera. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. All right, guys, don't forget to comment questions down below about anything related to audio and video. So if you have questions about audio for video, comment those below because we're going to be recording a Q&A and Nate is going to be answering those or trying to answer those. I'm sure he'll get them. I'm sure he'll get them all. But he's the expert, he's the audio engineer, and he is going to answer those questions. So make sure you comment those below. All right, so in part one, we talked about all these different types of microphones, and now Nate is gonna show us how to use these microphones. Nate, all right, first of all, tell us a little bit about the GH5 and what are some good settings for the GH5 specifically to get started?
Sure. So when it comes to audio on the GH5, unless you have the XLR1, which we're not going to talk about here today, we're going to talk about just what comes with your GH5. All you have for an input is your 1/8 inch input right here on the top of the side of your camera. And when you have your camera on, I have a quick menu item for this, but I'm able to dive right into my settings here. And what you can do is adjust your dial to go up or down on audio level. Typically, you're going to want this pretty low. Say if you're running something like the Rode wireless system into this or another lavalier system wireless, you're going to want to have this at -12, which is as low as you can get. And really, it'd be nice to be able to go a little bit lower, but this is as low as you can on the GH5, and it works actually pretty well. Whereas right now, Caleb's on Rode Video Micro.
Yeah, Video Micro.
And we have the gain on that set to -10, and the microphone is facing back at him. So there isn't a whole lot of control here, but depending on what you're shooting, you know, sometimes I'm at -12 if I have a wireless lav setup going in. Sometimes I'm on -10 to -8 if I'm using a top of cam mic like that doesn't have its own power. If I'm just getting scratch audio in the room for something, sometimes I'm up here in like -4 to -6. Just depends on how much signal you need in, but you always need to be mindful of this. You need to be looking at where you're metering, because if you clip your audio, that's like roasting your image and clipping the hell out of it, and that just doesn't look good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't sound good with audio either. So that's kind of where you're at on this, and it's important to look at it and put it on a quick dial, you know. On all these buttons on the back of your GH5,
super customizable.
you can hold them down and you can set it to whatever you want. So on my pad, my left button goes to mic level adjust. So I'm right here. I don't have to dig through settings. It's something I'm using all the time. Even though I'm not really using the audio in this camera all that much, I'm still using that setting and setting it for scratch or plug-in mics like we're using right now.
You know, to be honest with you, a lot of times I just keep my audio levels at -12 on the GH5. Pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I have to go to -10 just to get a little more kick, but
you have gain on your mic.
Yep.
So, I mean, because you're using wireless systems where you can control your output of them, and you have a shotgun mic like this that allows you to control it, yeah, really, you kind of want to set at -12. For GH5 shooters, that's what we would call line level. It's not line level, but it's as close as it gets. You know, if you're using other types of audio gear, that's line level. Say you're taking a really hot signal from a DJ, if you're shooting a wedding or something like that, you might use line level versus mic level because it allows you to contain all the dynamics of that signal because it's really loud.
All right, so we're gonna actually set a mic up, a lav mic up on the GH5.
Yep.
And what are some best practices about setting up that lav mic or an onboard shotgun mic?
So we have the Rode Wireless Go here. It's connected to the hot shoe, and we have the camera turned on right now. So the first steps to setting this up would be to set your gain to -12, and you plug your 1/8 inch cable in here. Here's a mistake that I actually made that I learned pretty quickly doesn't work so well. So what I thought initially is that you could wrap this around here just to keep it a little bit tighter so it's not dangling. The problem though is that there's a lot of interference that comes from these cables and the camera body and the receiver itself. So when you start wrapping this around there, it provides a lot more chance for that interference to occur because it's, right next to the cable. So when you're doing this, I know this looks ugly compared to doing that, but you're gonna want this to be away from the body, out in the open like this, so it's not up against your electronics. And you should have a better result there then. And then when it comes to setting your transmitter, on this system specifically, it's kind of all about what your gain is supposed to be set to. We don't have a microphone plugged into this now, but you can change your output level on the back here to low, medium, and high.
And that'll depend on the type of mic that you're using too.
Yeah, it depends on the microphone that you're using. So right now...
one might have like decibel levels, but this Wireless Go has low, medium, high.
Yeah, and so right now I'm not using a microphone other than the one that's built into the transmitter here. So say we had this clipped on right here. What you can see is on top of this, it's metering. You can kind of see that's good. And you can also see the meters on the GH5. And everything is pretty in the clear. We're metering pretty well here. I would say this is good to go. Whereas say if I jumped up here to even medium right now, it's a little bit loud. It's not showing a big difference, but we're really metering pretty hot on the GH5 at this moment. And now we're on loud, and it doesn't show clipping on the GH5 because I have the limiter built in, but you're definitely pushing it, and you're just losing a lot of dynamics that you would have. So, I would keep it so you always are preserving dynamics, but you're not too quiet on your signal. And you're gonna wanna be about halfway up on the meters. It's pretty hard to see anything on a numbers level with this stuff, but in pro audio and digital pro audio, you're trying to average around -16, -12. -12 usually shows up on audio meters for cameras. I would keep it around that -16 to -12 area on your average. Make sure you're never clipping either. So if there are moments where you're clipping, make sure you're back down. As long as you're not clipping, it's okay if you have to record a little bit quieter. So say you have a really dynamic response of something, and maybe you're not able to maintain an average level of -16. Maybe it just gets too loud every once in a while. That's okay. Like if you're recording an average of -20, just to prevent clipping, that's a better space to be in. Like you can still work with that in post. That's not too quiet. If your signal is coming in at like an average of -40, you have problems, and you're gonna know it in post. No matter what you're recording, that's just too quiet, and it's gonna have way too much noise as you try to build it up.
All right, we're gonna talk about placing a lav mic. Where is the best spot to put it?
Okay, so we're also getting my audio on this. I'm gonna try not to rustle it around too much. We kind of went with a really easy setup here, but this is just behind the collar of my shirt, and we're using something called transport tape, which is like a medical grade tape. It's really nice, it's really sticky. It's also really safe on people who have sensitive skin. So it's good to have around. And there's so many ways you can tape this on. There are different products that you can use that are more professional than this, but this is really good stuff to have with you because you can roll it over itself. It can act as kind of a double-sided tape for that. But we're hiding it right behind the collar, and you can kind of tell if something gets a little jumbled up. Mine might even be jumbled up right now. Hold on, yeah. So there are cleaner ways that you can do this. There are better products out there. Like Ursa makes a ton of products like the foamies. You can use moleskin. Transport tape works pretty well for certain jobs. Just depends on what you're trying to do, how clean you want it to be. Us tonight, we're being pretty casual with this. It's out of the shot, but it also is hidden. And minus me stretching and like pulling around on my collar, it still looks all right. You wouldn't be able to tell too much, but yeah, like I said, a lot of ways you can mount these. And you also want to have a little bit of strain relief. So I have a loop created down in here, and it's just taped onto my body. You can tape it on your shirt too. Just makes it so if the cable gets tugged, it doesn't pull here where it's mounted, it's pulling there, and it has a little bit of cable that it can pull through before it starts taking over like your capsule placement.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So that's kind of the benefit behind that. A lot of people do that just to save themselves. Gives you a little bit more mobility, but the name of the game is to be comfortable, to make it look good. Make it easy, and just understand that you don't need to spend a ton of money on product. Like you can use something cheap. If this gets it done, if this is passable, if it doesn't need to look perfect, this is really nice. It can fit in your bag. It's good on your skin if you're, if you have sensitive skin. It's really sticky, sticks on your skin and your clothes. And yeah, gets it done for this stuff. I like it.
All right, we're going to talk about the onboard shotgun mic. On this one, you have the Deity D3 Pro, which has some different levels and different features on it, more of a pro version. Where do we place this if we're talking into it? Let's say we're vlogging or something like that. Where do we place this? How's it work?
Sure. So the first things I always like to do after mounting the microphone, placing it where it's supposed to be. On this one, we're mounted right into the hot shoe mount. And we're in our audio settings here on the camera. We're gonna set it down to -12 because our gain is actually gonna be created here in the microphone. So we're good on that. The next thing we need to do is turn the mic on. This mic in particular has to be on. I've turned it on already using this top button here. The next option we have is to set the high pass filter. And right here, we're toggling between 75 Hertz, 150 Hertz, or off. For this, you kind of have to think about what's my use case right now. And for me, I'm gonna go 75 Hertz because I think that everything below that is kind of unusable with my voice. But I also don't want to limit myself in case I do like a little bit of low end. So the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you get your level set right. So this, we're not focusing on the video of the shot right now. We're just going to focus on how is my audio metering. So I can see my audio meters down here in the bottom. I'll actually put myself in focus here. And we can see where it's metering at. And on the back of this microphone, there's a gain knob, which I can go too hot, where I'm at right now, too much gain. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start like near the bottom. Act like you've never done this before and you don't know what number you wanna go for. Just check the mic. Hey, check 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey, testing 1, 2. You can test something that you would normally say. But I would say about right there is pretty good relative to my voice. We've set the gain. It seems pretty predictable. However, say if I were like going outside into a busy street or something like that,
yeah.
It's not as much based on my voice, like that's the main thing, but we also have to recognize that there might be something really loud here too. So maybe we'll back off a little bit in that situation. But yeah, sound check your mic for your different situation, get that dialed in. Another big thing is to wear a pair of headphones. Listen to yourself, see what you sound like when you're testing these different microphones, see what placement works a little bit better. Maybe you can find that your bigger mic doesn't work as well as the smaller mic for different situations. Maybe the audio sounds better on something else. You'd be surprised by what sounds good to your ears and what doesn't. And it's good to hear it, one, while you're doing it, but also to play it back after the fact. Because when you're checking things, you're checking your own voice with headphones on, chances are you're not only hearing what's coming off the microphone, you're also hearing like the room.
Voices inside your head.
And the resonance of your head. It's so true. So I usually use noise canceling headphones. Mm-hmm. But even so, it's really hard to know exactly what something sounds like because you're hearing your own resonance. So record a clip, play it back. That's the best way you can know how you sound personally. And yeah, that's how I would sound check it. That's how I would mount one of these mics for the setup.
Now I'm obviously behind the camera here,
yep.
And I'm using the Video Micro.
Yep.
And it's actually, probably about a hang 10 away from my mouth.
Yep.
And I mean, it's picking me up just fine.
Yeah, and we set the gain a little bit differently.
Right.
So it's all based on situation. Maybe that microphone, you need a little bit more gain if you're vlogging with it. And maybe you have to back it down a little bit if you're really close to the mic like that. So figure out what works for your workflow and try to cheat the system. Like the mic Caleb's using right now, when I use that mic for vlogging style stuff, I'll set it to -8 when it's in front of me. But if I'm behind it like he is, a little bit closer to the mic, I'll set it to -10. And one that protects me, like either way I'd be fine recording it. I wouldn't clip out or anything. But it makes it a little bit easier in post-production where my levels are more even. And that's just trial and error. That's just knowing that when I do this, it speeds up my post-processing, makes my levels more balanced, so I don't have to do constant volume adjustments.
All right, now we're gonna talk about podcast style mic. You already have this set up, but take us through this setup and maybe some best practices for if somebody's interested in like podcast style video.
Obviously, there are a lot of options you have when it comes to podcasts, but this is what I use on my typical shoots. And under this mic, I have a stand, nothing special, made by the company Array, something like that.
Array.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap. You can get them on BH Photo. I personally like these heavy bass stands. One, because this is kind of a heavy microphone, so you need something that's pretty heavy. It's also more predictable for me than having a boom arm. What's good about this is that I can set it in front of a guest, and I can set the height to it, so it allows them to have good posture while they're sitting, so they look good on camera. It allows them to be comfortable. It allows them to be more predictable, right? We have a setting where we have their height figured out, okay? And then we talk to them and say, I would like you to be anywhere between 2 to 6 inches away from this microphone at all times. So now we also have a sense of distance. And if you're a GH5 shooter, this comes in really handy for you. One, you're gonna get better audio because you're close to the mic, or your guest is close to the mic. But two, you're also maintaining focus. And when you don't have really good autofocus, or you don't want to use autofocus or rely on it in long format shoots, you have something that's a gauge that says your guest is going to be anywhere between here and here. And if you're using an aperture of f2 on a GH5, you're going to be in focus and you're not going to worry about it at all. Okay, so after we deal with the microphone and the stand and kind of the theory of how you would want to place an audio stand for podcasts, you're going to go down an XLR cable. Make sure that you have high quality cables, but also make sure that you have at least one backup with you, because you never know when these are going to go bad and it will just completely ruin your day. Another good thing about carrying an extra XLR cable is that they chain together. You can just put like a male end into a female end and the other way around, so you can always get a little bit more length out of your cable by using your backup cable if you need it. With this mic specifically, you're going to need something called a FET head or a cloud lifter. And basically what this does is it takes a microphone like a dynamic mic that doesn't require phantom power, and it utilizes the phantom power of your unit to boost your signal of your microphone by 12 to 20 dB of gain. So what I do is I have one of these for every single mic I use. I plug it into the cable here, and then I'll go right into my recorder. So for this example, we'll just go into channel 1. Very cool. And this is my power bank, so I'm going to turn that on and turn this on. Another pro feature of this audio bag that I created is that I have batteries within the F4, like you would on your portable recorder if you use one, but I'm also using the outboard power battery. So if that fails me, it'll immediately switch over to the internal batteries without having any hiccups. So there are multiple forms of redundancy to this system that I really like. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this mic set up. We're gonna get the level set properly. So the first thing to do after you turn it on and have your mic in, you're gonna wanna go through your settings. So on the menu here, there are all the recording settings that you can do, system settings. All you really need to know there is record at like 44.1 or 48K. You can record at 96K, but I don't think it's necessarily required for a lot of this stuff. If you want that little bit, if you want better audio, you can go that route, but you don't absolutely need it. 48K or 44.1 should get it done. If you want to dive into the mic specific settings, I'll press this button here. And like I said, we're utilizing the phantom power to power the FET head. So we need to make sure 48 volt phantom power is on, and it is. And I can see that I have signal coming in, but that's one thing to check for this setup. I actually am using the high pass filter within the microphone on the back. You can't see it because it's covered, but it's probably 120, 150 hertz high pass filter. So I'm gonna have that off here. I also really enjoy using the built-in limiter on this, and it's set to -2. So it really just catches the stuff that would cause it to clip. And it's been really nice for me on these podcast productions. So if your recorder has a limiter, don't be afraid to use it. Just make sure your threshold is really high, something like -1 or -2. Otherwise, that should be good for that. So I'm gonna put on headphones right now. And I'm gonna arm the track. And so you can all hear it right now. I'm actually recording while I'm doing this sound check. So again, like I was saying, earlier about setting mic gain, it all kind of stays the same. I want to be around -16 on my metering. Hey, testing 1, 2, check 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey, hey, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you can see about where I'm metering right here. You have a meter on this side. You can see where I'm clipping. If I go, hey, you can see I kind of hit the top there. That's a little bit too loud. You can also see that I have LED colors right here. So I might be a little bit too loud at times, but this should be pretty good. The limiter's saving me on the really loud stuff, but my signal is pretty healthy otherwise. As long as I'm right here, everything is good. But another thing to note about podcasts is that if your guest backs up, hey, testing 1, 2, 1, 2, that's a noticeable difference in volume. So it's really important to make sure that your guest is right on the microphone. Like I said in part 1 of our series here, dynamic microphones really are controlled by how close you are to them. And for a podcast mic, a dynamic mic like this, you're going to want to be right on it.
All right, now we're going to talk about a professional style shotgun mic for video on a boom. How do we set this up?
Okay, so the first part of this setup is the microphone, which in this case is a Rode NTG3. And I have it mounted in a little shock mount here to help with some vibrations. And on top of the shotgun mic is a dead cat style wind filter. You don't always need to use these. Sometimes indoors you might like them for if there's AC blowing, which I wouldn't recommend having your mic in that. You can fight some little air there. Mainly, I would say indoors you're using this for protection in case something falls. Or if you like the sound of the microphone, if the microphone's really bright because it's designed to be able to EQ itself through something like this to get over how dark this makes it, you might want it. This mic in particular is a little bit bright unless I use this filter. Sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll use it for that purpose. All of this is then mounted on a boom pole, which actually has an XLR cable built in. So if you look at the bottom here, you can see that there's an XLR output right on the base of it, which is super handy because this whole pole can articulate out in multiple sections too. So this thing goes to about 11 feet, I believe. Once you have this pole set up, the next part of this system for what we're doing here, yes, you could boom this and hold this, but if you're shooting alone or if you don't want to hold this mic for hours during an interview, you're going to want something like this. This is a boom pole holder, and how this works is you sit your boom in there, clamped into your C-stand, make sure everything's tightened down, and now it can, one, articulate out if you need to, but you can also go up and down with the setup. So you can use the C-stand to go up or down, or you can angle it up or down. So let's pretend that I'm going to be the person who is being interviewed. I'll set it up for myself because typically if I'm working alone on a gig, I have to be able to set this up and sound check it before talent comes in, right? So what I'm going to do is take a seat on the couch first and take a look at where this is at. And right now, for my preference, this is way too high above my head. And because the C-stand is a little bit taller, we're going to need to lower it down, but we might also angle the boom down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is angle it, and now I can actually work with a little bit of my height. So this is maybe a little bit too low for me. I'm going to come up just a little bit more. For you to more easily see what this looks like, I'm going to take off the dead cat. So the name of the game here is to aim it kind of right at your mouth. You want it to be angled coming in, so you have a little bit of tolerance. Say your talent moves in and out a little bit. What you don't want to have happen is for the boom to initially be too far overhead, because then if they dip in, you're miking the top of their head. Like, you can't do anything with that signal. So you kind of want it so you have a little bit of tolerance. You know that if they move in and out, they're not going to be affected by it. You know, you can do this by angling it. You can do this by moving it up and down. Another thing to consider here when you're placing this microphone is think about your sound sources around you. Like right now, we just had air conditioning turn off, right? But say that AC was coming from this side or this side of the room. Maybe you want to angle the mic so it's coming from that direction, because the rejection on this microphone is on the sides and it's on the back of it. So what you're trying to do is angle away from your noise source that you're trying to work around from. People who are professional boom ops, they'll either boom from above or below, and it all depends on where the noise is coming from. If they're trying to avoid a busy street or something like that, they might angle down or something, you know? Like, there are just so many ways you can work around with a shotgun mic and make it work in your space. Okay, on top of setting your placement up and thinking about those noise sources and trying to angle away from it, you might also want to bring in something like an acoustic blanket and hang it up on a C-stand. I have some over here on the side of the room that will show you. Should we show them?
There's some sound blankets on some C-stands.
So yeah, you can set up an acoustic blanket right here outside of frame. One, it would tighten up the signal because it's treating the space a little bit, but it also would help us get rid of that noise that's coming from that close source by putting it right between the microphone and the sound source.
All right, so we're just gonna mic in so we can hear a sample of what this would sound like on, let's say you're on set and you're doing an interview with a shotgun mic that's boomed up, and this is a sample of what that would sound like.
All right. So I'm gonna set my gain a little bit higher here. And right now you're hearing me through the Rode NTG3 microphone above my head. Say I'm talking to the camera right here, and because this is a wide angle lens, you're not gonna have a whole lot of like hope of getting the microphone out of frame. This is where it really comes in handy using longer focal lengths because you can really compress things and get rid of that. But this is what the mic sounds like without a cover on it. Sounds pretty good. And now I want to give you a demo of what it sounds like with the dead cat. Oh, that sounds so bad. Okay. You might be able to notice a difference. There's a little bit of difference in the top end of it. It's a little bit less airy right now. Who knows what sounds better in post? I would say that if you like it to be a little bit more crispy, you might like it without the dead cat. But like I said, if you need wind protection or if you're trying to just have it for the element of safety, you're definitely going to want one, and you can always get those frequencies back in some way with EQ and in post. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you comment down below and let us know what you want to learn in the Q&A video coming up in a couple weeks. I'll let Caleb lead this out.
Yeah, make sure you comment your questions for Nate because we're going to be recording a Q&A. We're going to be going through those questions. Make sure you comment those. Now, if you like what you see here, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.